All right, hello. I'm Scott Garriott, and this is Vinyl Tag 2025, started by Pretty Green Vinyl Guy. And this is actually my first time doing it, so hoping it goes well. Hope you enjoy it. I'll just get right into it. There's 20 questions. And first question is best purchase, new or old? I went ahead and did two of these because there's different ways you can interpret that question, but this here, Steely Dan, Countdown to Ecstasy, was something I found at a little record store like a couple hours away from where I live. I just took a day trip to the store just to check it out, and didn't find a whole lot I wanted there. And I've owned this album in the past, but I sold it, and I like it a lot, but I've kind of been getting more into a couple of tracks from it this year. And what's really cool about this copy is it's a white label promo. As you can see there is the white label on the back there. But it's only $10. I found it in a box of records, and he knew it was a promo, but he gave it to me for $10, so that was an excellent deal for that. And then I also, it said new or old, so I picked a new album as well. This is the Lemon Twigs, A Dream Is All We Know. And I got this on eBay, bid on it, got it for a little cheaper than they would normally go for, because it's the peppermint candy vinyl there. Wasn't my number one album of the year, but it was probably in my top five. Really great album. Great pastiche of like mid-60s, late 60s pop, like very Beach Boys and Zombies kind of sounding. There's a track called In the Eyes of the Girl, and that one's like the best Beach Boys pastiche you'll ever hear. Sounds like Surfer Girl with lyrics from Pet Sounds or something like that. It's just amazing. So next up we got best album from 1974, because that was 50 years ago. And for me, it's Neil Young's On the Beach. This is my favorite Neil Young album, and one of my probably top 20, top 30 favorite albums of all time. Got a poster from right above my head for it there. Just a nice copy of it, nice original copy. Love that album. It's got a great kind of mellow vibe. Got a lot of, all the songs are all great as well, but it's really just like the way it kind of works as an album. Depressed and melancholy for sure, but also very like relaxing and mellow and kind of vaguely trippy at the same time. It just really, it's a one of a kind of experience and sound, and my favorite Neil Young album by quite a bit, actually. I'm going to show another one from 1974 because this is the most valuable and the crown jewel of my collection. This is Peter Grudzian's The Unicorn, released in 1974. He is a gay outsider country artist, and not for everyone. It's a little bit homemade sounding, rough around the edges, but it's right up my alley. I like that kind of stuff, and really interesting lyrics, and just really interesting mix of like lo-fi country music with some little glimpses of weird experimentations here and there. And the homemade sound, you know, it could turn people off, but for me, it really kind of draws me into the music even more. Very one-of-a-kind album there. Then we had an album that defines a genre. We're at number 3. And this was a bit tricky for me because if you go by like the big genres like rock or hip-hop, jazz, I mean, there's not really one album that would define those. Or even if you go like psychedelic or something like that, I don't know which one album I would choose. So I went a little bit more niche. I picked stoner metal, which is a genre I got into a few years ago. Never really been big into metal, but then I discovered stoner metal, or sometimes it's called doom metal, or drone metal, I think. Actually, drone metal is different, but this album, Electric Wizard, Dope Throne, is, I don't know if it's like the quintessential stoner metal album, but it's how I kind of want metal to sound. There's some other good ones in the genre. They got Sleep's Holy Mountain, and other Electric Wizard albums like Witch Cult Today. But this is so heavy and fuzzed out. It's like the way I want metal to sound, so it kind of defines the genre for me. Next up we have artist from your home country, best band from your home country. So I'm going to head and went with the Velvet Underground. This is a 1968 press with the full banana on there and everything. And coincidentally, I'm actually borrowing this album. This is a original mono with most of the banana, but it's got the original cover. If you know the story, it's called the torso cover. So the one I have is the censored cover, but got to give this back. But someone I work with at a radio station lent that to me. So not a cheap album I'm holding in my hand there. It's pretty rare. I also went with Modest Mouse. They're not my favorite band or anything, but they're probably the best band from Oregon, which is where I'm from. So I went with, best band from your home state as well. At least from the bit of online research I did about bands from Oregon, Modest Mouse kind of stood out. Lonesome Crowded West is a great album. That early Modest Mouse is really what I'm into. All right, next up we have an artist that you miss dearly. And I went with David Bowie. It's kind of an obvious pick, but that was one. I was actually just getting into his music when he died, and so that kind of hit me a bit harder than it would for most. This is my favorite David Bowie album, Heroes. And it's my favorite because I really love side one. Side one just like full of amazing songs. Not just the title track, but the whole thing. And then side two is like this Brian Eno collaboration, and it goes to places where you just can't believe you're listening to a David Bowie album. And I really like albums like that kind of transcend your expectations. But that's the one, yeah, it's like, again, like maybe not for all tastes, but right around the time Moss Garden hits, I'm like, I can't believe this is a David Bowie album. It's like, I don't know, it trips me out in a way that I really like. This guy died before I was born, but I picked Nick Drake because it would have been interesting to see what he did after he, if he had lived longer. And Jimi Hendrix is along that same vein as well. Would have been really cool to see what he made if he had lived longer. All right, what do we got next? We have Best Live Album. And for that, I picked this album. I'd wanted this for a while. I picked it up. This is an original copy of Townes Van Zandt's Live at the Old Quarter, which was the first Townes Van Zandt album I ever heard. Got that Tomato label. And I like some other Townes Van Zandt albums a lot now too. Like the self-titled is amazing. But when I first heard his studio work, I kind of thought it was too produced because I was used to that live album. But I got over that eventually. But I still really like that live album. It's probably my favorite album of his, and it was the live album from my collection that I thought I should show. So next up is Your Partner Just Dumped You, What Are You Putting On? And I'm going with something that I used to listen to when I was in a really, bad state of mind, or some of my lowest points in life. I would play Leonard Cohen, Songs of Love and Hate, really any of the first three Leonard Cohen albums. It's like something about it, just like the emotionality and the richness of it, and obviously the lyricism too, but just like his voice and the whole like tone of the music really gets into me. And I'm not someone who likes to play happy music when I'm depressed. I like to really feel the emotion, and that one really does it for me. All right, next up we got Best Sounding Drums on an Album. And this was just the first one that came to mind, Flaming Lips, Clouds Taste Metallic. I am not even a huge Flaming Lips fan. I mean, I like them, but I don't know their catalog that well. But this one, something about the sound of the drums is just so explosive and mixed in there, like so heavy, and just like they really kind of explode and out of the speakers. And that was just what came to mind. Really great drums on the album. All right. Next up, we have favorite artist who is a member of two or more bands. And for that, I picked Graham Parsons. This is my favorite country album of all time, Gilded Palace of Sin. It's an original 69 press of that one. But he was also in the Byrds for this album. Sweethearts of the Rodeo, love that one. I want to get an original of that. That's like a 70s issue. And this is another band he was in, a little lesser known, the International Submarine Band. This is a modern, I think, Record Store Day white vinyl issue of that one. And he also was a solo artist, so that 3 or 4, depending on whether you count solo artists as being a separate band. But He had two great solo albums. This is one of them. So that's my pick for that one. Right, we got Beatles or Stones for next. So before I answer that question, I'm going to show a couple of my favorite Beatles albums I got. So this is Rubber Soul. It's actually a 1965 UK mono, and I found this down in Amoeba Records in Berkeley, California. And this is when I first started collecting. I had no idea the significance of, like, you know, UK Parlophone labels or anything like that, but got it for $1 in the dollar bin, and I've had it ever since. And it doesn't look perfect, like it probably looks VG, but it sounds so good. It just sounds so good. I also have this Sgt. Pepper 1968 stereo, or 67 or 68, an early stereo press with the Parlophone label, UK. So those are my two favorite Beatles albums. But with that said, the Rolling Stones is my choice between the two, because the Rolling Stones are possibly my favorite band of all time. I'm going to show a couple of Stones albums. They got this copy of Let It Bleed, which I Frankensteined, which means you put together different versions of the same album to make the best possible version. So basically I would buy like versions that had one really good aspect. Like you can see it's got the Shrink and the Hype sticker, but I combined it with like a really mint disc, and then I bought another copy that was not in good shape, but it had the poster, so I put the poster in there. So it's a nice, you know, kind of Frankenstein album that I had to work hard to create this. Got this year. I just thought it was kind of cool. It's between the buttons with the Shrink and the little Rolling Stones sticker on there. US mono. And this is my favorite Rolling Stones album. One of my favorite albums of all time. Maybe top 3. Exile on Main Street. And then this is just kind of a nice little curiosity. It's a Japanese press of Beggar's Banquet from the 80s with the toilet cover. And next up, you found a bag of weed. What are you going to listen to? And interestingly enough, there's a Rolling Stones connection with this answer as well. This is one of my favorite bands of the past 30 years, the Jonestown Massacre, named after Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. And this album is called Their Satanic Majesty's Second Request. So that's a reference to the Rolling Stones album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, obviously. And something about this album, it just like hits perfect. I don't know, the sound, especially when you listen to it on vinyl, just like the instruments and everything. I don't get stoned a lot anymore, but when I have, and if I were to do it again, this is definitely the one I would play. It just kind of, it's hard to describe, it just kind of hits me right in that state of mind. Then we have an album from the 80s next. And this is my favorite album of the 80s. For all other decades, it's kind of hard to say what my favorite album would be. I mean, I have my choice for all the decades, but there's always, like, you could always argue a few different albums. But for me, the 80s is the easiest one to pick. It's Rain Dogs by Tom Waits. It's the best album of the 80s. There's nothing else, for me at least, really competes with it. It's the Japanese press from the year it was released. So happy to own that. All right. Artist whose political stance soured you. I don't normally stop listening to artists because of their political stances. And even with this artist, I have not stopped listening to them. I still listen to them, but the artist is Ariel Pink, and I met Ariel Pink actually, and I got these albums signed. These are my two favorites by him, dedicated to Bobby Jameson and Pom Pom. And you can see I got the signatures on there. Great albums. I highly recommend them. But he had kind of an issue, like, back during the first Trump inauguration with the whole Capitol riot and everything, where he was not at the riot, but he was at the protest, and then he got dropped by his record label, which I don't think that was good either, but he kind of ended up doing a whole, like, right-wing media circuit and went on Tucker Carlson and all this stuff, and after a while I was kind of like, okay, like, you can believe what you believe, I just got kind of tired of hearing about it, and to the point where I didn't stop listening to his music, but, like, I had one of those albums framed on my wall, so it's no longer framed on my wall, so that was, that's the way in which it soured me. to him because not my politics. You know, if I'm not gonna judge anyone if that's your politics or whatever. But right, we got favorite record label. I didn't think too hard about this one. I probably could have thought of a more original one if I had more time or if I spent more time. But this is a Black Sabbath UK copy with the Vertigo label on it. Not the original copy with the producer credit, but it's like a year or two later after it was released. So yeah, that Vertigo label is pretty cool. Then we have a run of 3 singles, and these were not singles released simultaneously, but they were, you know, within a couple years of each other. I got Kate Bush, and this is Wuthering Heights. It's like a French copy or something like that. I'll show that a little closer. And I have Babushka from the album, I forgot the name of the album, but Never Forever. And then Sat in Your Lap from my favorite Kate Bush album, The Dreaming. I got those 3. Thought that was a good choice for that one. RST Purchase You Still Listen To. For that, I picked Steve Earl, El Corazon. Steve Earl's a country artist. I think he's still playing now, but a lot of his best albums were released in the 90s. And this is my favorite album by him, El Corazon. And the only time it's been released was for Record Store Day, you know, like 10 or 15 years ago. Probably more like 10 years ago. But yeah, still play that one sometimes. I'm definitely glad to own that one. Bought that one on Record Store Day when it was released. Alright, if you could be reincarnated as any artist, dead or alive, for me that would be Bob Dylan, because I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. He was my biggest inspiration, and I kind of wanted to be Bob Dylan throughout most of my early adult life. And the era of Bob Dylan would be mid-60s, probably the album Highway 61 Revisited, this era. Got a couple copies here. This is a 60s press with the shrink and the hype sticker, and that's the Japanese press from the 70s. But something about his, it's hard to get into, but anyway, I'm seeing the movie tomorrow, A Complete Unknown, so we'll see how good that's portrayed in that, but just the way he was kind of always a step ahead of everybody in his own really strange way, but influenced the culture so much, and as soon as the culture would catch up to him, he would be on to another thing, and doing it in this really kind of wild and poetic and punk rock kind of way really resonates with me, even though, and he also kind of comes across just like a real person at the same time who's also portraying this image. It's a very complex yet simple character that he has put out into the world. All right, best 3 lines in a song. So I could have picked a Bob Dylan lyric, or I could have picked a Leonard Cohen lyric, or something from one of the great songwriters, but I decided to go in the opposite way and go for something more simplistic, because I really like, I love, you know, deep, introspective, wordy songwriting, but I also really like simplistic minimalism as well. And the Ramones, I think, were kind of underrated in that sense. I think they were geniuses, to be honest. Especially the lyric from the first track of this album, Blitz Creek Bop. They're forming in a straight line. They're going through a tight wind. The kids are losing their minds. The Blitz Creek Bop. They're piling in the back seat. They're generating steam heat, pulsating to the backbeat. The Blitz Creek Bop. I think that's pure poetry. I think that's amazing. One of the best lines ever written. Album you never tire of. Okay, so this is my favorite album of all time. Incredible string band, The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter. And I picked up this promotional copy this year, early this year, about a year ago. And I don't play it as much as I used to, but I love it just as much as I ever did. It's kind of like acid folk. Very kind of strange, but very, very strange and psychedelic, but kind of earthy and human at the same time. full of contradictions, just like life itself. Really, really beautiful, but also kind of abrasive at times, but really beautiful at other times. And then I also picked this album, Heart of the Congos. Got this UK copy, early 80s UK copy. Sounds amazing. My favorite reggae album of all time, Heart of the Congos. If you like reggae, give this a listen. It's just balances the catchiness and the richness of the instrumentation and the vibe really, really well. And I guess that's it as far as the records. And the last question on here is your favorite VC channels. And so I'll shout out Noble Records. It's probably the one I watch the most. Melinda Murphy I watch a lot. The In Groove I watch just to see, he really knows a lot about like which pressings are the best in his opinion, and been influential as far as what I've searched for, as far as like nerding out on different pressings and versions of albums and stuff like that. Canadian Stud Muffin, he doesn't really talk about vinyl, but he's just a fun music channel. And then I have to shout out the Vinyl Guru also, because I put out a video like 5 or 6 years ago, and she commented on my channel even though it only had like 20 views or something like that. So she's commented on a few of my videos, and she also has a really enjoyable channel herself, so I thought I would shout out the Vinyl Guru. All right, that's it for the video. I'm going to also promote a couple of projects of mine. I just finished an album, 25 tracks, all genres, of kind of a crazy passion project I've been working on for like 3 years. It's called Lost on the Grid by Scott Garriott. It's on Spotify and all streaming services. Check that out. I also made a movie back in 1997 called Delusion Blues, kind of an experimental black and white comedy that involves conspiracy theories and music elements as well. The main character works at a radio station, and he's trying to find a enigmatic musician that he keeps hearing about. And that's all I'll say about that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.